What's up, guys? BenSamulakTV here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking time to check out this video about how I did not get surgery on my wrist. So when I was looking up videos on, broken wrist, no surgery, I could not find anything. My doctor, I'll tell you my story. I think it was around 4th of July, the 5th of July. So it was the 4th of July weekend. On the 5th, the kids had a day off and we were going to go to the beach. So I was showing my daughter something. I don't want to get into detail. I was not too happy what I did, but I fell and, landed on my wrist, cut myself backwards. And I knew when it hit, I could just feel the sting, and it hurt so bad, and I just knew it was broke. But then, I didn't know would I have to get an ambulance or what, because it hurt so bad. I just felt like at the initial shock, I knew it was broke. I eventually it went into shock, kind of like the shock kicked in a little. So then I could, I moved it back straight and then went to the emergency room. I told my wife, she's like, she's like, you seem fine. And I'm like, it's broke. I know it's broke. So I could tell. I just knew when I hit. So I took it in. I went to the doctors. I went to the emergency room. They looked at it, x-ray, yes, broke. I'm like, oh, great. Then I just knew that, we were going to go to the beach. We were going to have a good time, but I just ruined everything for the day. Plus I knew in time that was going to be bad. So I just didn't know exactly, what I was going to do. So I went, they were like, put a temporary cast on there. As people have done it, know they put a temporary cast on it. I went home. They said, go to the specialist, the next couple of days or like a week. I set up an appointment, went in, they did another x-ray, and he was like, yeah, I think you should get surgery. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't, I was at the time, I'm like, okay, probably. Because when they, in the emergency room, when they showed me, there's almost looked like a little piece of bone, like a little chunk, just a little piece was there in the x-ray. So I was like thinking like, yeah, they're definitely going to do surgery to take that bone out, whatever. Because I don't know how bones heal, and what, my mind is like, that looks like. Now, the doctor told me, he said, well, the bone in the joint's a little off. And he showed me, like, he did a little chart. He's like, it looks like, it's about 15%, and that could slide in the next couple of weeks as when you put a cast on it. And so it could get worse. And he said, what do you do? Do you lift weights? You're active? Yeah. I would just recommend getting this plate. So he's going to put a metal plate, titanium plate with, I don't know how many screws, 16 to 18 screws or however many screws in my bone. And that's going to be in there forever. So I'm like, okay. And I'm like, he's like, you're going to get that. It's going to only be a couple days or a week. And then you're going to be able to go start physical therapy and everything's going to be great. So I was like, wow, okay, that sounds probably the best thing to do. So, but then he said, they said you had to get a COVID test, and I don't want to get a COVID test. I've not got one. So I know some people don't care, but I do not want them shoving that thing up in my nose. And I won't even get into that. That's a whole nother video. But that at least, not that I'm never going to get one, but it made me start to question, do I need this surgery? So that I thought about it, I said, because it's covered up and it was bruised, I could tell. And it was like, it didn't look that good when I, first had it, and they had a temporary cast. So, and I was like, he told me what it was going to be like to get the surgery, but he didn't tell me what it would be like if I didn't get the surgery. So that's when I started having questions. So I said, I want to get a second review. Maybe I should get a second opinion. So I called up there and they're like, you have to get another opinion, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I just want to see someone else. I don't even care if it's in the same, they're friends, the doctors know each other, the same practice, same place, but I just want to talk to someone different, just to get to ask some questions I have. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll set it up with this woman doctor. That first guy was a male doctor, the other one's a woman doctor. So went to see her, and I said, I'm like, they did another x-ray, and they're like, yeah, they're like, no, it hasn't moved, look at it, it's about, he said it could go to like 30, he could go to like 25 or 30%. It was at 15 when he looked at it. She looked at it and she's like, she's like, okay, yeah. And I said, my questions were, I looked on YouTube and I saw a lot of people who got the surgery, nobody who didn't get the surgery. And all the people that got the surgery, they had a scar that was like, the one guy couldn't even put a watch on for a whole year. And it took him like 2 years, and he couldn't even shake his hands with the metal plate after 2 years. You could see a video of this guy, he fell riding his bike, and he plays, instruments and stuff. And I don't know if he played instruments, but someone else in the comment was like, I play guitar and I'm afraid, I don't know how this is going to affect me playing guitar. And I thought about that. I was like, oh yeah, me too. I wonder how is this And then so with the metal plate, but I can totally move my hand perfectly fine. So, but she got me worried, and she's like, yeah, we don't know if we don't do the surgery, you know, what's going to happen. Now, I mean, it may be a little off, and still, you know, it's only been, I don't know how many months, but I mean, it's not like, I asked her, like, is it going to be disfigured? Is it going to be deformed? Am I going to be crippled? Am I going to have pain? And they said, well, you might have arthritis in the future. You know, that's what they've discovered. And I started doing more research of, because there's not a lot of videos about this. So I started doing research, and I come to find out the wrist, when you break your wrist, it's one of the biggest fractures in a year in the whole US. That's the biggest bone broken, is a wrist. So I started thinking to myself, okay, before they were able to start putting this metal plate in people's wrist, what did people do when they broke their wrist then? I mean, if everybody's breaking their wrist, that many people, like 250,000 people a year, something like that, it's one of the biggest, like I said. So I started researching that and started wondering then, you know, I asked the nurse, the girl doctor, you know, I'm like, will I be deformed? Will I be crippled? She's like, no, you might not even notice. And I'm like, okay, so that made me even more leery. Now, do I need to really get this surgery? Or then I started really thinking about, I'm getting a metal plate with how many screws? 18 screws in my bone. And then I told her, what's, you know, I may get arthritis if I don't get this surgery. What if I do get this surgery? Is there any side effects? She goes, yeah, you could have a scar that's very sensitive. It may not take in the bone. You might have to take it out later. There's all these different things. It could rub up on your nerves or and different things, tendons. And so I'm like, wow. So it was not that clear cut anymore. So that's when I decided, you know, I started really thinking about it, doing more research, and I saw a study on these elderly people. And when you get to be elderly, they don't even do the surgery because they know it's not as, you know, potentially, like with me, I'm lifting weights, I'm going to be active. So they think younger people may be better to get it. But with elderly people, they decided to do a study where they had half of them got some kind of intense something happened and the other one's nothing. And they found it after a certain amount of years, when they went back to check, they're all happy. They all were fine with the way it turned out. So then I was like thinking, like, okay, now what about all these people who break their wrist and before they had the surgery, did just everybody's crippled? And so that's when I come to start to look into how do bones regenerate? What is it? And I started looking into that, and it's, you know, watching more videos on that, and how after, you know, the bone, you know, it clots, it starts to create a bone, you know, a substance that's like cartilage, and then it starts to eat away the bad bone. So, and then it starts to, so if there's chunks, little pieces, even that little piece, it probably just like there's chemicals and fluids, whatever that goes through that cleans up the mess in there just naturally. And then after a certain point, it gets harder, and it's like, it's not flat bone, but then in time, your bone, there's other things that flow through there that actually smooth the bone out in time to make it like all of a sudden it looks like it's back to new. So that when I started reading, I'm like, wow, so our bodies and the natural way that we are created to put our body back together is there working for me. And so then that's when I started feeling like, okay, but I still was wondering, am I going to be crippled? And still have a little pain in my thumb here, but it's overall, it's like, you know, I can make a fist. I can go, I have a little less mobility. And that's because when I went back a week later, I said, let me get re-x-rayed. So I told the girl doctor, I'm going to wait. Let me just wait a week and think about it. So she said, let's come back in a week. We'll re-x-ray it. So, you know, I tried to keep it straight and flat. And so when they re-x-rayed it, she's like, oh yeah, it did. It moved. See? And now these guys are friends, you know, she doesn't want to look bad, making it look like she told me to do something that because they know each other. And like I said, I went to the same practice. I just wanted to see someone different. So I could tell she's a little nervous. Like, I don't want to tell him not to do it. And then the other doctor might get mad at her, or make it look like she told him something different than he told me. So, you know, I could tell already, even her advice was kind of a little skewed. So, but I took everything in, and then she's like, yeah, it did move. See, it's about 20% now, and 15 or 20. And I'm like, he told me it was like 15 or 20 when he did it. She goes, well, yeah, it's probably about 20 or 30 then. And I'm like, that's when I'm like, okay, I don't feel comfortable getting the surgery. I said, I'm not going to be deformed or crippled. I might have arthritis, but if I get this plate, I might get some other things too in the future. So why don't I just wait? I told her, let's see how it turns out. If I had, and then the guy doctor, I said, what if I wait and let it heal, and then I need to fix it later? He's like, well, I just have to saw it then. I'm going to have to saw it. And I'm like, saw it? Like, he's like, really sounded really intense. Like I'm saw your bone in half and redo it. And so he really made me feel like you don't want to do that. You want to get the surgery. So I'm like, I don't know. I was kind of, I'm not telling you guys not to do this, please. Like for me, I was the whole way through, I was kind of nervous and I was kind of uncertain because I'm not a doctor and I don't really know. But like I said, I just had this feeling that because when I looked at my x-rays, it didn't look like it was not out of joint or out of socket, just, I mean, or out of place, or it was just, and even they seemed to be worried about it. They're like, just cast it. And so I told her, is it going to move anymore? She's like, well, possibly. So then I said, well, I just want to wait. Let me put a cast on it and I can come back next week if just to see. She's like, it's probably not going to move. Once I told her I'm not going to get surgery and just put a cast, she's like, it's not going to move anymore. Don't worry. So like pretty much if you're not going to get surgery, just you're going to just wear it for 6 weeks. And I'm like, okay. So I wear this cast for 6 weeks. And the first cast, it was like, they made it really bulky and like my thumb was so much pain because there's a nerve here or something. So after 3 weeks, I went in, I said, can you guys redo this? Cause I don't know if it's hurting. Like the nurse that saw it was like, oh my gosh, who did that cast? Oh, she's like, they did a terrible job. So they redid it. And it was a lot smaller, not as bulky. And they left this open. Like she put the cast way up and they're like, they're not supposed to do that. They have to give you. So the second nurse, she gave me more mobility and if I let my thumb breathe and felt a lot better. So, and then, then finally the cast was removed and I thought, okay, it doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look comparatively, they doesn't, and I have no scar. I have, just a little, still, like I said, a little weakness in the thumb. But then after that, I went right to physical therapy and I started going. Within a couple of weeks, I was like getting all my strength back, mobility. And I asked the physical therapist, when people come in with the surgery, are they usually faster or less than me? And she's like, well, typically it takes about a year. They're slower. And I'm like, what? Like it's only been about 4 months for me, guys. And so I had the cast off and I was in physical therapy for like 2 months. And it's like already like, I can shake it. I can no. So that's it. And then, I decided to do a video on this because I didn't find any videos when I was researching, should I get the surgery or not? And I didn't know what I should do. And I was trying to find other people whose stories out there who didn't get the surgery and what happened. And there's very few. And with that, and I had to do research outside of that and to come up with what I decided to do. But that's it. So that's my story. And if that helps you guys come up with, what not, just, this is all for educational purposes. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you advice. So if you don't get surgery and you're all messed up, don't blame me, please. But at least for me, it would have helped to have somebody, some people on YouTube that had shown something other than the surgery. I saw one girl get a surgery and she couldn't even get out of bed for like 2 weeks. It hurt so bad. And so that's when I was like, wow. Like, so then the more I, was watching certain things and decide, even the whole way through my healing with my cast, I was still watching videos because I was still worried, like, did I do the right thing and what's it going to be? But once I got the cast off and went to therapy and it started getting better, started feeling better, getting strength and able to bend and move. And I've been lifting weights, for like a month now. So even after just 3 months, I've been hitting back in the gym, almost back to full strength with lifting weights. So that's it. But like I said, mine was not really far out of socket or off. It's probably still a little out. That's why they're saying I could have arthritis in time because it's not going to be rubbing the right way. But what about if I had a metal plate and 20 or 30 or however many screws in my bone? What could that have been, in 20, 30 years from now? I don't really know. So that being said, that's it. I just want to share that with you guys. Hope that helped. Thanks for tuning in, BenSamulakTV. Check you guys out. See you next time. Bye.